Welcome to African Folktales by Eri. Please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more interesting stories. Also to share with friends and family. Now, sit back, relax, and let the story begin. In the distant shadows of Mount Kilimanjaro, nestled among rolling hills that turned golden under the setting sun, lay the village of Mawingo. Once prosperous and teeming with life, Mawingo's vibrant spirit had been crushed under the heavy boot of the neighboring warlord, Sefu the cruel. For 15 seasons, the people of Mawingo had labored as slaves, their bodies bent but their memories intact, recalling days when children's laughter echoed across the village square and elders shared stories beneath the ancient baobab tree. Among these enslaved people was Baako, whose name meant firstborn in the old tongue. Unlike the others, whose eyes had dulled with hopelessness over the years, Baako's gaze remained sharp and clear. Even as a child, he had watched with quiet intensity as Sefu's men raided their village, killing his father, the village protector, and taking everyone captive. Though he was only 7 seasons old when the tragedy struck, Baako made a silent promise beside his father's unmarked grave: someday, he would return freedom to his people. Now a man of 22 seasons, Baako's body bore the marks of hard labor, but his spirit remained unbroken. Each night, after the backbreaking work in Sefu's fields, he would slip away to train in secret. Using wooden sticks fashioned to resemble his father's spear, he practiced the warrior's dance his father had begun teaching him before death stole those precious lessons. The ancestors' watch, old Kamau would whisper whenever he caught Baako training. Kamau was one of the few elders who survived the initial raid and the subsequent years of brutal slavery. His bones were brittle now, and his back was permanently stooped, but his memory remained sharp. What good are watching ancestors when our people suffer? Baako once asked during a moment of despair. Kamau's wrinkled hand gripped Baako's shoulder with surprising strength. They wait, my son. They wait for one who remembers the old ways, who carries the blood of warriors. They wait for one who possesses both strength and wisdom to lead. While Baako trained and planned, others among the enslaved had found different ways to survive. Chief among them was Jelani, Baako's childhood friend. Once they had chased grasshoppers together and learned to swim in the village stream. Now, Jelani had become Sefu's trusted informant, earning small privileges by reporting on his fellow villagers. Jelani watched Baako with growing envy. Despite their shared suffering, people naturally turned to Baako in times of trouble. When the elderly faltered under heavy loads, it was Baako who somehow found the strength to help carry their burden. When children cried from hunger, Baako often shared his meager rations. And when hope threatened to extinguish completely, it was Baako's quiet determination that reminded them all of their humanity. He thinks he is special, Jelani whispered to anyone who would listen. Look how he stands apart, as if he is better than us. What has submission earned us but survival? Yet he risks everything with his foolish dreams. Some listened to Jelani's poisonous words, especially those who had forgotten what freedom felt like. However, many others saw Baako for who he truly was, a flickering ember of hope in an endless night. Tabitha, the daughter of Kamau and widely regarded as the most beautiful woman among the enslaved, was one who believed in Baako. Their love had blossomed slowly and quietly, hidden from the prying eyes of Sefu's guards. When they could steal moments alone, they spoke of a future where their children would be born free, a future where the traditions of their ancestors could be honored openly again. My father says you have the spirit of 10 warriors, she told him one evening as they gathered water from the stream, the guards watching from a distance. Baako looked at her with a serious expression. One warrior with a plan is worth more than 10 with only anger. Tabitha smiled, the rare expression transforming her face. And do you have a plan, Baako, son of Kofi? I am making one, he replied softly. Each day it grows clearer. But when the time comes, I will need brave hearts to stand with me. You will have mine, she promised without hesitation. Unknown to them, Jelani stood within earshot, his face darkening with jealousy. He had desired Tabitha for years, yet she had eyes only for Baako. This was yet another reason to resent the man who seemed destined to outshine him. The opportunity Baako had been waiting for arrived during the 7th month of his 22nd year. Sefu had been summoned to a distant gathering of warlords, taking half of his guards with him. The guards that remained grew lax in their duties, drinking fermented palm wine late into the night. Tonight, Baako whispered to the small circle of trusted friends he had gathered over the years, tonight we take back our freedom. Old Koma offered a silent prayer to the ancestors, while others looked both terrified and determined. Among them were Kito, whose strength nearly matched Baako's, and Gentozai, whose knowledge of healing herbs had saved many lives over the years. Notably absent from this circle was Jelani, whom Baako had deliberately chosen not to invite. But as the small group dispersed to spread the word secretly among those who could be trusted, none noticed the shadowy figure slipping away toward the guards' quarters. Jelani stood before Kibwe, Sefu's lieutenant who had been left in charge. I have information, he said, his voice steady despite his heart racing. Baako plans an uprising tonight. Kibwe laughed, the heavy smell of palm wine on his breath. The slaves. Rise up. With what weapons? With what courage? Baako is different, Jelani insisted. He has been planning this for years. Many will follow him. The guards' amusement faded. What do you want in exchange for this information? Jelani answered without hesitation. When this is over, I want to be made overseer of my people. And I want the woman Tabitha. Kibwe studied him with contempt but nodded slowly. If your information proves true, you shall have what you ask. If not. He left the threat unspoken. As darkness fell across the compound, Baako began to implement his plan. Using the skills he had honed in secret for years, he first eliminated the 2 guards watching the tool shed silently. With access to machetes and hoes, tools that had been used for forced labor but could now become weapons of liberation, he armed the first group of fighters. However, as they moved toward the sleeping quarters to free the others, warning drums began to sound. Kibwe had positioned guards strategically, expecting them. We have been betrayed, Kito whispered, gripping his machete tighter. Baako's eyes narrowed as he quickly assessed their situation. It changes nothing. We fight or we die as slaves. Those are still our only choices. What followed was a night of chaos and bloodshed that would be remembered for generations. Despite being outmatched and betrayed, Baako fought with a ferocity that seemed to channel the warrior spirit of his father. His people, seeing their chance for freedom after 15 years of oppression, fought with desperate courage. By dawn, the unthinkable had happened. The compound that had been their prison lay in ruins. Many had fallen, both enslaved people and guards, but those who survived stood as free men and women for the first time in 15 seasons. Amid the celebration, Baako searched for Tabitha and finally found her tending to the wounded. Their embrace was brief but fierce. We must return to Mawingo, he announced to the gathered survivors. We must rebuild what was taken from us. And so began the journey home, carrying their wounded and singing songs of freedom that had not been heard for nearly 2 decades. The path back to Mawingo was long, and their hearts were heavy with both joy and sorrow, joy for their newfound freedom, sorrow for those who had not lived to see this day. As they walked, Baako noticed Jelani among them, his face carefully composed into an expression of sheer triumph. Their eyes met briefly, and in that moment, Baako knew. Yet he said nothing, for this day of liberation was not the time for confrontation. The question of betrayal would wait until their people were safely home. After 7 days of difficult travel, the familiar hills surrounding Mawingo came into view. The returning group fell silent, overcome with emotion at the sight of their ancestral home. Though overgrown and partially reclaimed by the forest, the bones of their village remained. As they crossed the threshold of what had once been the village entrance, old Kamal dropped to his knees, tears streaming down his weathered face as he pressed his palms to the earth. We have returned, he whispered.